And I thought, I could carry a baby for them. He said, don't be ridiculous. Do you know how old you are? You can't do that. I said, I can. Anyway, and I approached Michelle. I said, Michelle, I'm going to do this for you. She said, are you sure, Mum?
I'm Mia Friedman. You're watching No Filter.
Thank you for having me.
You want to start with the sad stuff.
Sometimes you have those days. I just cried. I just bawled my eyes, and I don't know why.
If you can't be wise, be kind.
I never cry in No Filter interviews.
It was sort of just opening my eyes to a new world.
I love it. I live it and breathe it. I love you.
Did you guys ever talk about having kids, like early on? Like, what are we going to call our babies? How many kids do you want?
Yes. As a part of as the relationship progressed, we did talk about what we saw in our future, and kids were definitely a part of that. We always wanted a bigger family. Like Jono wanted 4 kids. I was fine with whatever. I didn't mind. I thought we'd see how we went. And so, yeah, they were definitely always a definite thing that we were doing in our life together.
You'd had a clue that maybe pregnancy wasn't going to be so easy for you. What was your first hint that fertility could be a struggle?
My first hint was my first period. When that came, it came along with excruciating pain. So from pretty much day dot, I would be in the fetal position with the amount of pain that I had. And that was consistent up until I started taking medication that stopped my period altogether.
Oh, wow. And
they were the best years of my life because I experienced no pain then because I just didn't have a period.
As a doctor, I would diagnose endo. Did you have endometriosis?
So it was because I was so young, they suspected it was endometriosis, but they didn't want to do a surgery on me at that age. And so I just went along with it. They said, it's probably endo, just take the pill, don't take the sugar tablets, and you won't get a period and you might not experience pain. Which at the time I was like, great, that's fine. I didn't even think about future repercussions of that. I just thought, right now, this is stopping all my pain, so this is great. When I finally came off of them, the pain came back straight away. I would be in bed at 2 a.m., on all fours, rocking from side to side like I was about to give birth. I would had alarms going off on my phone all the time to remind me to take painkillers.
Sounds horrific. Jasmina, did you have difficult periods? Did you have any experience in dealing with this?
Now, in the beginning, I thought, why is she making such a big deal? It is a bit uncomfortable.
Drama queen.
Yeah, drama queen, exactly, because I was a bit tough love kind of a mum.
Yeah.
And when I saw that she was actually sweating with the pain that she was experiencing, I thought, hang on a minute, this is not right. And then we did go to specialists. We did get ultrasounds. We got all the tests, and they didn't really give us any indication of how she would, what she would go through when she decided to have a family. Nobody actually envisaged that or told us or warned us about it.
Yeah, it was always suspected endo. And when I finally had an operation, they said, yeah, they confirmed it was endo. But then there was a comment made saying that, oh, your uterus is a bit small. And I was like, oh, okay.
We didn't
and
think
that was it.
Small uterus,
just a passing comment.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. And
how did you find out that you had a unicorn uterus?
It wasn't until I went to see another specialist who did another laparoscopy and said that they found this thing that comes up on ultrasounds, and people thought it was an endometrioma, so just a sac filled with blood as a symptom of endometriosis. Yeah. Always assumed it was that, but it was actually a part of my uterus that didn't quite meet the other half of it when I was forming as a fetus. So my uterus was coming together as a fetus, and this side was late to the party and kind of attached itself awkwardly. And it was that was trying to menstruate every time I had a period, had nowhere to go. And so my body was cramping, trying to get it out, but it wasn't working.
Wow. Could you just get it removed?
Yeah, I did.
No
And
pain,
that stopped the pain?
nothing. All those years, how cranky I am that she suffered with that when it was such an easy fix. So you've got to go to the right doctor.
You had started an IVF fund for yourself before you even met Jono. So you must have had a clue that it was going to be difficult because of all of this, right?
Yeah, I did. I knew that the level of pain that I was experiencing was not normal.
Yeah.
I knew that I wanted to eventually have kids, and I knew that IVF was expensive. And so it wasn't necessarily I was saving money for IVF. I was just saving money. And I had like a lot of money in a savings account, and I would just refer to it as my IVF fund. I think I ended up using it to go on a holiday. But
Kentucky tour instead of IVF.
Well, that wouldn't have even covered the expense that they.
Yeah, that's so true. You eventually did use IVF when you and Jono decided you were going to try and start a family. What was your IVF experience like? How did it go?
My IVF experience for me was quite pleasant. I didn't really experience a lot of the adverse effects of the hormones. I didn't mind injecting myself. That wasn't a big deal. Egg collection wasn't that painful for me. It was all
But you endured
fine.
so much pain throughout your life that this was just a
blip, yeah.
Another thing.
You did fall pregnant. Was it your first go at IVF?
No, it was we did 2 rounds of IVF.
Mm-hmm.
First round, we made 2 embryos and neither of them were successful. Then the second round of IVF, the first embryo that we implanted was successful.
You fell pregnant that second round, you said, and in the early stages, you woke up. Did you wake up in the night and you had a big bleed? What happened?
I had just finished dinner and I had got up off my chair and I just felt a gush. And I was like, that's weird. I've never felt this before. And so I went to the bathroom and there was just blood everywhere. And I just continued to bleeding. It was like someone turned on a tap.
Did it hurt?
No, it was just blood was coming out. And I assumed that this was what a miscarriage was.
Yeah. So you went to the hospital.
Yeah.
Well,
Did you
John
call your
was
mum?
Worried. He rang me. He said,
Yeah.
He said, Josie, there's Michelle's really bleeding, and I didn't really understand how much blood she had lost until I went there. It was all over the floor. They'd attempted to wipe some of it off.
Oh, my
Michelle was
God.
curled up in the corner of the shower. She was quite upset, and the ambulance came and took her, and it was horrible. And
That
then we
must have
thought,
been so scary and also sad because you thought you were losing the baby.
At that point, I assumed that this was a miscarriage.
So they did the ultrasound and I assume you expected them to find nothing there.
I was passing really big clots and every time one came out, I assumed that was our baby.
Yeah.
And then the sonographer was just like, oh, and there's the heartbeat. And I was like, excuse me? Yeah.
Wow, little guy was holding on.
such a fighter.
What a fighter. So did that mean that the pregnancy was pretty high risk, I imagine, at this point?
Yeah, so with my unicornuate uterus and the bleeding was very consistent. Like I bled every single day that pregnancy, more than I would have a regular period. So I was bleeding quite a lot.
Were you so anemic?
No.
Probably was, but
I
that was
don't
the
know.
last thing
That
we
was the
tested
last thing
for.
on my mind.
How do you get every time you went to the bathroom or you felt the blood coming out, you must have thought, oh, he's gone, like what's happening? How do you manage that mentally for all those weeks?
I guess you kind of repress it a little bit.
That'll do it.
Yeah, yeah.
She was still working full time
Yeah,
from her couch.
yeah. It was in COVID, so I got to work from home.
That
which
was
really
a
nice.
blessing, actually. She
Yeah.
could just lie on the couch.
Yeah.
She didn't do very much.
Yeah.
We wouldn't let her, but
But I just assumed that if it wasn't a big bleed,
Yeah.
everything was still fine. And we were having very regular ultrasounds as well.
And did your doctor tell you that you would probably carry to term, maybe not carry to term? What were they telling you?
Yeah, so my doctor said that there are lots of women with this kind of uterus that usually will carry up until around the 30s. Like that.
Which is great, which is good. I mean, it's still premature, but it's good.
Yeah. He said that it might be around 35, 36 weeks. Problem might be that the baby's breech because there's not much room to turn around. Problem might be that, it might not be able to stretch as far, so it might come a bit early. But there are so many women around the world that are able to carry babies to term.
Wow.
Yeah, this kind of uterus.
So you were trying to get to at least 24 weeks, 25 weeks, which is kind of viability.
Yeah.
How far did you get?
19.
Then what happened?
Then I woke up, I think it was a weekend, and I went to the bathroom and there was no blood, which was pretty good. Good morning. And then I just noticed that, like, the TMI, the toilet paper was a little bit more wet than it usually is. And I was like, that's a bit weird. Went back into bed, lay down. I was perfectly still, laying horizontally, and then a just gush of water came out. Oh, no. And I was like, my water's just broken. And so we rushed to the hospital.
Jazzy, did Jono call you?
Well, that night they came to our house. We had dinner and it was getting late, and I said, look, don't drive home, just stay over. And Michelle, I remember said to me that night, I don't know if she remembers, I don't feel right. I said, oh, you've probably eaten too much. She was lying on the couch. She said, I just don't feel right. Anyway, and Jono said, look, I think Michelle's waters have broken, so we rushed to the hospital. I went with them.
When you were driving there, I'm sorry, tell me if this is all too upsetting, but when you were driving there, did you think there was a chance, or did you know it's 19 weeks? This isn't going to end well.
I think in the moment, you're just trying to deal with the situation at hand, that I wasn't necessarily thinking that far in the future. I didn't know if this was something we could come back from. I didn't know what was really happening. And so I was just kind of, in this limbo.
Didn't the ultrasound person, when they ultrasounded you and they found that the baby's heartbeat was still beating, I think he said to you, or she said to you, that sometimes the amniotic fluid builds back up. Yeah. So there was hope. There was still hope.
Sometimes it reseals and it can fill back up.
So I thought, okay, well, that's going to happen this time.
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't reseal, but it builds up, and then it's still enough for the baby to practice swallowing and breathing. Yeah. But no, that wasn't our case.
You had to give birth to little baby Ralph. I'm so sorry. He was born having already passed away. And this is going to sound so strange, but I lost a baby at that same point at 18 or 19 weeks. And when I watched your story on Australian Story, and I watched the time that you got to spend with baby Ralph in the hospital room, I was so jealous because I didn't get that, and I felt I was given the choice to give birth, and I felt that I couldn't, and so I had an operation, and when I woke up, that baby was gone, and there were no remains that they were able to give me because of what happened, when they were extracting her. And it's so funny because it was such a tragic thing, those images of you in the hospital, and yet what a gift that was, to get to spend 2 days with your baby. Is that how you see it?
Yeah. When I was giving birth, I had always dreamed about giving birth vaginally, naturally. I thought I had experienced so much pain with my periods that I used to joke. I was like, childbirth's going to be easy. It's going to be a dream. Like,
I'll phone it in. Yeah.
I was so grateful that I was able to give birth. Even though it wasn't going to be, you know, a nice outcome in the end, I was so grateful that I got to experience it. I was so grateful that a few days before my water broke, I could feel him start to move a little bit. I was so grateful for all of that. Memory that sticks with me is when he finally came all the way down. Like, I could feel everything, and I just thought that was amazing. Like, I never thought that like you could feel all of that. And it was incredible. And the way that hospitals now treat a stillbirth is so amazing. There are a volunteer group of photographers that came and took photos of us as a family, which was amazing. The social workers that come in and chat to you all the time. We had a cool crib so Ralph could stay next to us. We could have him.
He had a little hat. He had a little beanie.
Yes. Yeah. Like the old grandmas knit the beanies.
Nice.
Wow. They're teeny tiny little beanies like thimbles.
It is amazing, and I am so grateful that we got to spend that time. So before I gave birth, I didn't know if I wanted to. I was just like, I don't know if I want the photos. I don't know if I want him in a cool crib. I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. But when he was here, I was like, no, I do want this. This is really nice.
Yeah.
Before you got to be with him, you started hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
In a big way.
Yeah.
Do you have any memories of that?
Vivid memories. I remember everything. I remember the name of the anaesthetist as I was wheeled into surgery.
Wow.
I think with such like a traumatic event, my brain just like absorbed everything. It was just on.
Wow.
I was delivering the placenta. I was holding Ralph, and the placenta was coming out in like little bits. It was a bit funny, and my doctor was like, oh, this is a bit weird. It might just be because you delivered so early that the placenta's whatever. And then she was like, just give me a couple of pushes. And so I was pushing, everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, it was like a horror film in like the 50s where blood was squirting out.
Wow.
My poor husband was sitting there just watching it. I could feel things happening.
Yeah. What did it feel like from the inside?
Just felt like one of the like big gushes of blood that I had previously. Just a gush of blood that I'm assuming like lots of women have when they have a flooding event. Assuming it's the same as that. It was just a big gush, and then all of a sudden the doctor was like, okay, I'm going to call theatre. I had a midwife next to me that started pumping my stomach. The other midwife was trying to detangle me from all the cords and disconnect me so they could wheel me away. And my doctor was like, we're just going to take you into theatre. You're bleeding a little bit. We're just going to do something to stop it. And they were all so calm. And I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. Meanwhile, Jono standing next to me, he was like, he just said he was like, there was so much blood. You got it on the walls. It was all over the doctor. Wow. I was like, I didn't see that part.
And he was holding Ralph.
And then, yeah, we passed him to Ralph. They wheeled me away. So poor Jono was left in a room by himself holding his child that had passed away with his wife's blood all over the room.
And potentially could pass away as well.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Passed away from that.
Well, I was asking the midwife as we were being wheeled down, I was like, do people pass away from this? And she looked at me and she was like, no. And it was only afterwards that she was like, yeah, people can pass away from hemorrhaging. I just didn't want to tell you that at the time.
Did you also say to her, because you told me, you asked her, am I going to die today?
Yeah, I was like, am I going to die from this? Do people die from this? And she was like, no, you'll be fine.
Imagine if she said, well, sometimes.
I know.
She did come and visit her the next day to check on her.
Yeah, it was only afterwards that she said that she believes that people are aware of their bodies. And when I said that, she was like, oh, gosh, does she
know
No.
what's
yeah.
Jazzy, where were you? Where were you, Jazzy?
COVID. It was bloody COVID.
Oh my God.
I was on the telephone, not knowing whether, and Jono was trying to play it down, but I could hear in his voice that he was panicked.
Oh.
Obviously said, look, we've had a son. He didn't make it. And Michelle just had to go to theatre. I said, what? Theatre? Did she have a cesarean? No. And she said, there was a bit of blood and they have to stop it. And it was only afterwards that they told me the extent of it, especially because she was in ICU for a couple of days.
Oh, no, just one day.
Just a day. Well, that was a day long enough.
Just one day. Just one day and I see you nearly dying. Just one.
Yeah, that's Michelle all over me.
Just one.
Everything.
Just one short day.
It was very, very scary. Very
Jazzy,
scary.
you must have been
I couldn't go to sleep.
like an animal, like wanting to get to your
I was, and I kept
child.
weeping, and I didn't want to be that person that was always in their face, but I wanted to know, is my daughter okay? It was horrible. It was the worst time ever. I don't wish it upon anybody.
I can't even imagine.
Mm.
And then when you came out, what you endured, which was beautiful but also heartbreaking because no one wants a pregnancy to end that way. You go home, you leave Ralph. That must have been incredibly tough doing that.
Yeah, it was really hard. I wanted to take him home.
Yeah.
I also knew that I couldn't.
Yeah.
Well, Jono rang me. He said, Jazzy, you've got to ring Michelle and tell her she doesn't want to let Ralph go. She won't let them take him. And I said, oh, goodness. I said, have you told her? He said, yeah, I have, but you need to tell her. And I rang her. I said, Mish, you've got to do this. You can't. I said, it's hard, but you have to let him go. And that was one of the hardest things. And she said, but I can't, Mum. I don't want to let him go because I'll never see him again. Yeah. So, yeah, it was really hard.
Yeah, but I'm so grateful for all the photos that we got with him and all the days that we got to spend with him.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's like proof of him. Like, he was real. He was your boy.
He made her a mum.
He made you a mum.
She got to experience pregnancy and birth.
Oh my God.
Mish, when did they tell you, hey, we're not going to be doing that again?
It was when I went to a follow-up appointment after everything settled down. My obstetrician just looked at me and said, I don't think you should try that again. And I was like, why not? Why can't I? And she was just like, there's too many variables at play here. We don't know why you bled the whole time. We don't know why your water broke so early. We don't know why you hemorrhaged afterwards.
Yeah.
There's just too many things that are either going to cause more trauma to yourself or potentially negative health effects.
Well, you might not make it next time.
Dramatic.
I'm not dramatic, Mia. This is the truth.
Well, it is true. It's actually true. Listen to your mother, Michelle, and your doctors. They're right. It's too risky.
Yeah.
But I knew Michelle, Mia. I knew that she would not take no for an answer. She was the doctor that would do it. And my husband and I spoke about it. We thought, there is no way Michelle's going to go, I can't go to IVF again. I won't be a mum. She would have gone.
So you were worried that she was going to do it again and risk her life?
100%. My husband and I were speaking to each other. I said, Draggy, Michelle's not going to take no for an answer. He said, but, she's been told. And my husband had no idea about surrogacy at this stage, but I had heard about it years and years previously. And I thought, I could carry a baby for them. He said, don't be ridiculous. Do you know how old you are? You can't do that. I said, I can. And I researched it. I Googled it. I showed him articles. There's not very much out there, especially in Australia. Anyway, and I approached Michelle. I said, Michelle, I'm going to do this for you. She said, are you sure, Mum? Anyway, I don't know how Michelle felt about it, but I was adamant I was going to do it.
I've got mascara.
I've got mascara all over my face.
Where were you? How did that conversation happen? Just like over a cup of tea, or?
It was like a running joke that we had even before all this happened, because I knew that like the pain that I was experiencing was a lot. I knew that I had half a uterus. I knew all of this. And Mum was like, oh, I'll just do it for you if you can't.
Haha.
Like it was always a running joke.
My husband had never paid attention to any of this stuff.
And it was, I don't even remember it. Do you?
No, I don't remember it. It
was just like, I will do it for you.
And I kept saying my period. I've still got a period.
Yeah.
It's still happening. I can still do it.
You? Good Lord above. At 52, you had a period. Michelle, I mean, Jazzy, look at you. You've got a super uterus.
Premenopausal, but I did. And I kept every month going, yes, it's still here.
Did you need to have a period to be a surrogate?
I don't know.
But they want you to, there is a cutoff. There is definitely a cutoff, an age cutoff. So by 52, which was me, that was the cutoff.
Yeah.
So we had to move quickly.
And we haven't talked about Sophie yet, Jono's sister, your sister-in-law.
Yeah.
Was that like at the same family dinner that she said, yeah, I'll do that also? Like, what happens in your house?
Sophie?
Yeah, again, I think it was always just something that she also said. She was like, if you can't do it, like I am happy to do it for you. And then I think we went to her house afterwards and she just said to me, I'm serious, I will do it, like if you want me to.
So my question is, Sophie had 3 children. Jazzy, you had Michelle and one other child. When you each found out that the other was going to do it or was willing to do it, didn't one of you go, oh, well, you're sorted. I won't do it too. Let's just choose one.
That was never an option for me. I was always going to try and help her out that way. I knew that she wanted to have more. I thought it would be nice for her to have more than one child. And it was a bit rich asking Sophie to do it twice. So I thought, you know what, I'll put my hand up, I'll go one go. And Sophie was going to go as well. So there was her family.
Did you already have the embryos from your previous rounds of IVF so they were ready to go?
Yeah. Embryos, the second round of IVF, we got a lot of embryos. And so they were already there ready to go. So we didn't have to go through that process again.
What are the laws around surrogacy? You couldn't get paid for it. You can't pay someone to carry a baby, but someone can do it altruistically, right?
Yeah. The laws around surrogacy are that you need to complete counselling. There needs to be a legal agreement. The surrogate cannot be financially disadvantaged in the agreement, but you're also not allowed to pay them on top. So you're supposed to cover like medical costs, all those things. Yeah, if they have to take time off work, then you would pay for that time that they took off.
Did you have to do 2 sets of counselling, or could you all just like kill 2 birds with one stone and just all just go in together?
So we did myself and Jono, Mum and Dad.
Yeah.
Dad didn't understand why he needed to be involved.
Like, what have I got to do with this? Why do I need to be here?
You know how well he is about feelings? Like,
yeah.
I feel fine. You know, how does this affect you? It's fine.
I don't want to talk about my daughter's vagina. Or my wife's in a room. I don't want that.
So myself and Jono had to do it. Mum and Dad had to do it. We had to do it together.
Okay.
And Sophie and her husband had to do it. Then we had to do it together.
Got it.
Then we had to get all 3 couples together and do one big happy family.
Wow.
Just in case, I don't know, maybe
just in case.
What kinds of things did you talk about in the counselling? What do they want to know?
How are we going to feel when the baby was born and having to hand it over, and how are we going to cope with the mental load of it all? But
it was also just seeing if you're a sane person to begin with.
Because I was going to say, how can you answer that when you haven't done it? You don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. But also it was a lot of questions on just are they in a good mental state to be able to carry a pregnancy?
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And finding people that specialise in this was hard because you had to get, what was it? Yeah, you couldn't just get someone that does law for, like, you know, when you buy a house or conveyance, you had to be a specialist in that field. And that was hard. We ended up going with Melbourne, I think.
Yeah.
One of them, they had to be separate.
We had counsellors and lawyers from all over the country.
So why did you need lawyers? Because of when the baby was born, genetically it was Michelle and Jono's.
Yes.
But it came out of the body of Jazzy and Sophie.
Yeah.
So what does the law have to do? Did you have to adopt your own biological children?
Yes.
Pretty much.
So the legal agreement that we had to do as a part of the surrogacy process was based purely on finances, so that legally, if someone was out of pocket, one of the surrogates were out of pocket, we would have to make sure that they weren't. That was the extent of the legal agreement. There was no line in that said, Jasmina must hand over the baby.
Jasmina can't run off with the baby.
I've raised my children.
That was not stipulated in the legal agreement.
Right.
So she could have taken the baby and there would have been no legal document saying that was not a bad thing.
Who's on the birth certificate?
So mum and dad are on Hugo's birth certificate, and Sophie and her husband.
Hilarious.
Spencer's. And so then I had to fill out hours and hours of paperwork
with 2 newborn babies.
Once they were born, to have their birth certificate changed.
That seems outrageous that your husband, Jazzy, and Sophie's husband, who really didn't even want to go to the counselling appointments, frankly.
Yeah.
It was a strange situation. Yeah. Definitely a strange situation.
Yeah, wow.
I thought it was weird that there had to be a second parent on it.
Yes.
Yeah, what's my husband got anything to do with it?
Literally nothing.
Have to be on it, yeah.
But I also understand why my dad's name was on it, because if the situation was reversed and you had an embryo that had been donated to you, grown a baby, delivered it, and then
fair.
I understand why the law works in that way.
So, Jazzy, what was pregnancy like the third time around at age 52?
I had, I was pretty impressed that when the transfer happened, Michelle said, Mum, you're going to get 3 goes. I don't have an endless supply of embryos. Like, oh, no pressure. She said 3 goes and that's it. You know, I'm going to hand Sophie out. Then she's younger and it'll probably, work for her better than you. And I thought, oh, gosh, no pressure. So anyway, Hugo was implanted. I drove home. My husband drove me home. I had my feet on the dashboard because I didn't want to risk anything. I'm sitting and I lay down.
Didn't want it to fall out.
I didn't want it to fall out. I lay down on that couch, Mia, for 3 days. I did not move with my legs up on the thing. And anyway.
It worked.
I did. It worked. Anyway, we went to the ultrasound and there's a little heartbeat. I thought, oh, did it. First go, Michelle. Ha.
But pregnancy, when Mum was pregnant the first time, you were 21 and 20.
I was a 21-year-old and then a 24 with my pregnancies. And I'd sort of forgotten, but I knew that it was, and I had easy pregnancies. I didn't have any morning sickness. I worked pretty much to the end when I carried Michelle. And then with Hugo, I was sort of psyching myself up. I thought, this is not going to be as easy. I'm an old woman. But it wasn't as bad as I had psyched myself up for it to. It was relatively easy. I felt very healthy. I think I only threw up once in the beginning. I felt a bit seasick, definitely. But that was quite comforting because I thought, well, if I am feeling sick, then it's still happening, yeah.
What about you Were you like perimenopausal and pregnant at the same time?
I recommend women our age carry their grandchildren as a surrogate. Okay. I was a 20-year-old. My frozen shoulder defrosted itself. My hip was very sore before that. It wasn't sore. I had beautiful, luscious hair. My skin was beautiful. I had all the hormones. I had all the estrogen.
It's a different type of HRT, I guess.
It's a great it's a natural HRT. I felt great, honestly. I did, apart from having gestational diabetes, which I expected I would get. I didn't, and that was a good thing because I put on 30 kilos when I carried Michelle. I put on 10 kilos when I carried Hugo because I was on a very strict diet.
How did you feel different in your pregnancy and how you felt towards the baby?
I felt like babysitting for 9 months. Like, you don't want this child anything to happen. I stopped putting retinol on my face because, it said, oh, not for pregnant women. I stopped. I was careful with what I ate because I thought, oh, no, that's too much sugar. And I definitely didn't drink alcohol, obviously, but I was on edge. I didn't hang out the washing. My husband would, and he was just as protective as me. We were on high alert the whole entire time.
It's like babysitting on steroids.
It was. And
yes.
Hugo had turned, unbeknownst to me, and he didn't kick for about a day and a half. And I was getting more and more worried, and I was sitting next to my boss, and she said, just go to the hospital. I said, oh, I don't want to bother them. She said, just go. And I didn't tell Michelle and Jono because I didn't want to make them nervous and scared. I went in and they said, oh, no, he's still, got a heartbeat. It's still kicking. He just turned. He had his back to me. And that was like, but until I got him, got it checked out, I was just a nervous wreck thinking, oh, gosh, I hope everything's okay. I hope. And I poked my stomach and still nothing that I could feel. It was
the responsibility must have been really hectic. Yes. Michelle, how did it feel for you in terms of, I imagine, were you jealous a little bit?
Yeah. I was, it's amazing how many emotions you can feel that contradict each other at the same time. So I was first and foremost so grateful that two women were putting their bodies through this for my benefit. Like I was,
they loved you. Yeah.
So grateful that we're able to do this. But then every time I would visit or I'd be just sitting on the couch with Jono, I would just have this longing that I wish it was me, even though logically I know it can't be me. I cannot do this. I just was annoyed that it wasn't me. It wasn't necessarily like jealousy of them. It was just, I wish I could do it myself.
Must have been also quite exhausting to be that grateful.
Yeah.
Was it? Like, I thank you. No, but thank you. No, but thank you so much. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
That overbearing to them. It's like, Mum, what's for dinner? I just like, excuse me?
Yeah. No, she would. She'd go over Sophie's house and help bath the kids, especially in the later stages of Sophie's pregnancy.
We were, a lot more helpful for Sophie.
But I said to Michelle, I'm fine. You don't need to need to do anything with me. I'm fine.
Yeah.
How old was Sophie's other kids?
So small.
At the time, I can't remember, 7 or 6, 5 and 4. 3.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah.
And what did she tell them? I mean, not that they would really care or be that interested.
Well, the best thing about little kids is that you tell them something and they're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, they just accept it. It's excellent.
It's just like, Mum's going to grow Uncle Jono and Auntie Misha's baby. And they're all like, oh, okay.
Cool.
They would call her bump, oh, that's our cousin.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Did you have to have some awkward conversations when it was like, oh, you're pregnant? You're old, or who's back? Yeah. And then you had to go, oh, yeah, it's my daughter and her husband's back. Like that's not a conversation that's easy to have like at the supermarket with a stranger.
Well, in the beginning, Michelle wasn't ready to tell anybody. And we've got a group of friends that we always go out with. And lucky it was winterish. So I'd rock up with these scarves and these big coats and I'd say, Michelle, we have to tell. She said, no, I'm not ready yet because, I don't know, whatever reason she wasn't ready to tell.
Why weren't you, Michelle? I want to ask you about that.
I was petrified that it wasn't going to work. Like we hadn't made it to the 19-week mark. We hadn't made it to 24. We hadn't.
Okay.
Yeah. It was.
So you're protecting yourself. Yeah.
It was a protection mechanism.
I get it.
Well, I was pretty huge. And I was just waiting for one of my friends to say something and I didn't know how I was going to explain it away. So I'd be sitting there sweating in scarves and jackets and they go, it's hot. Why can't you take? No, I feel cold. Thinking that, meanwhile, they were looking at me and going, oh, menopause is not treating that woman right at all. Look at her. She's got hot flushes. She's got a big gut.
Weight gain. Look at her.
Weight gain. And it was.
Then Dad. So one day they decided to tell their friends.
Because Michelle said, okay, you can tell them now.
I wasn't there.
No, you weren't there.
What happened when you told your friends?
We were sitting at dinner and my husband said, look, everyone, I need your attention. And then they go, well, we're having a baby. Jaz is having a baby. She's pregnant. And they went, what? Like, it was like a disgust almost, like, what's wrong with you?
What are you old people doing? Ew.
Yeah, pretty much that. And then he goes, but it's not my baby. And then they went, you?
That's so funny. He sounds excellent.
So, yeah, we told them. But a vivid memory that I have, we had to go through the hospital, through the specialists there. And Michelle couldn't get out of work that day, so it was just Jono and I went. And I said, Jono, can we hold hands when we go in?
Oh, you're such a troll. I love it.
There were people looking at it going, oh, what are you doing with her? Like, she's old. And even when I went shopping, people would look at me. I could see they do a double take, going, the calculations, like, you look too old.
Yes. And Jonathan could have just gone, oh, don't worry, it's just my mother-in-law.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have been lying either.
The two different births, because you know, Sophie got pregnant the first go of IVF as well, which you weren't expecting. So there was 7 weeks between you, right? Between your delivery dates. You had Hugo first, and you had him by C-section. What was your experience of the birth, Mish? What was that like for you?
I was petrified. I was so nervous, like just hoping that everything would turn out okay. I was scared for Mum having, you know, major abdominal surgery. And I was, you know, very hopeful that the baby would come out alive. And so there's videos of me just like pacing up and down the corridor and just like jumping and doing dances, just being like, okay, I'm ready, like, come on.
She was nervous.
I was very nervous, and I don't normally experience intense emotions like that. Like, I was
very chill.
Very nervous.
How did you both feel when the baby came out? What was that like?
It is surreal, and I think it is for so many people. Just as soon as they're here, you're kind of like, you're here, what? Like, oh my goodness, there's a person in that stomach, like, and now you're mine. Like, I had shock. I was relieved that he was well. There was just so much joy. I was like elated. I was like, you're finally here. This is real. I cannot believe it. Yeah, it was a really nice moment.
Jazzy, how did you feel towards the baby? And I think I know what you're going to say, compared to when you met your own children for the first time.
I felt like a grandmother. I never felt like he was mine, not even for a second. Yeah. And I was so honoured and proud that I could do this. I was healthy enough. Yeah. Because there's, apart from the psychological testing and factors, you have to be physically healthy, because the doctors aren't going to risk your health and life by making you go through this. It was such an honour and a privilege, and just watching them, the joy and the tears of happiness, and, you know, holding Hugo was just the best thing, and I'll never forget that. And I was so lucky to be part of that. Yeah,
a lot of mums try and weasel their way into the delivery room, and someone took it up.
I did try. Funny you say that. I tried.
And well, this is what you have to do, Mia. Yeah. This is exactly what you've got to do.
I didn't think of offering to actually carry the baby. That will be my plan for grandchild number 2.
Next time you do that.
It's interesting, Mish. I've watched some of the footage of you for the birth of Hugo, and then for the birth of Spencer 5 weeks later. And Sophie, your sister-in-law, gave birth vaginally, and you were there with Jono. That was very funny to watch, because he was that's his sister's vagina down there that his son's coming out of. Yeah. And he trying not to look at one point.
It's so cool.
And what did Sophie say when he was trying not to look?
Sophie was just like, we've come this far, just it doesn't matter anymore, Jono. And Jono was still like, no, I can't do it.
I can't. He looks very funny in that. But what I noticed most was the difference in you and when you were watching Hugo be born versus when you were watching Spencer be born. And I know that one was an operating room setting and it was surgery and it was different. But you almost seem, very understandably, a little bit, blank is the wrong word, but detached, like you're still protecting yourself, like you still can't quite believe it with Hugo the first time. But with Spencer, your whole face is cracked open.
I think the experience before Hugo
Yes.
was such a traumatic, bad birth that's the only thing I have to go by. And so I'm just trying to be cautious but still be excited. And then when Hugo arrived, it was disbelief that this is finally real.
I could see that on your face because also the last time you were in a hospital, an operating theatre, you were bleeding out.
Yeah.
So that must have been incredibly overwhelming and traumatic and triggering and all of the things and beautiful and...
I didn't focus on any of that though.
Yeah.
On the day he was born, I didn't think about any of that past trauma. I just thought, I'm so excited to meet him. I really hope it goes well. I didn't even think, is this the theatre that I bled out in? Like I didn't even think about any of that.
Did you feel a bit like Ralph was in the room somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think that, he's around watching his brothers.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like let myself think, he'd be 3 now. Like the boys, imagine having a toddler and twins or whatever. That would be insane.
He'll always be there. I still think my daughter would be like 25, and I still think about that sometimes. Yeah. What it's a nice. It's comforting though now. Like it's not. For me, it's not a deep sadness, but it's like I like thinking of what she would maybe be like,
Yeah. Like I make a cake for his birthday every year.
That's beautiful, yeah.
2
babies at home, twins essentially, like what, 5 weeks apart?
Yeah.
When you're out with 2 babies, do you just say they're twins? I mean, it's a long story otherwise.
Don't want to trauma dump on other people. Well, actually, they're not, and this is my story.
And they're like, I was just being polite.
They're twins to everyone.
Yeah.
Even, when I go to the only time I ever tell the stories, the pharmacist the other day, I had to pick up medication for them both, and he was just like, their scripts have different birthdays. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Very observant pharmacist.
Even she put their names down for childcare, and the childcare person rang them and said, look, you're probably tired and haven't slept much. You put the wrong dates.
Yeah. They seem to be born in different years. How's that?
Everyone on the street, twins, yeah.
December and January, 22 and 23.
They looked so different. There was Hugo, a big, like baby, and there was Spencer, this tiny little newborn. And they go, twins. And she go, yeah. Okay. They don't look the same. They even say now, are they identical? Do they look identical? No.
A lot of people struggle with the idea of that there are fraternal twins that exist and twins can look different.
So many.
Even though they're not twins, I still think it's interesting that people don't understand.
It's funny.
And the boys, what stories do you tell them? I mean, you guys have no secrets. You're talking to me. It's not like it's like, don't mention it.
Yeah. They're still quite young, so they don't really understand anything.
Or care, really.
They have a photo. There's a photo of Ralph in their nursery, and I point to him and I'm like, that's your brother. We have like a picture on our TV screen that's a photo of me, Jono, Mum and Sophie while they were both pregnant. And I just point to the tummies and I'm like, that's you in there. That's like you in those tummies. And so hopefully they'll always just know. And then when it comes to explaining why that happened, it won't be a shock later on in their life.
I was thinking about you guys and I was just thinking about, when you sat down and you're like, it's not even a big deal. It's like it's a nothing. And I imagine at the time it was so huge, and the decision and how it's going to go and explaining to people. But it's a little bit like, you know, when you're pregnant, you think so much about the birth, and then that's just a day, you know. It's like how the babies got here. Did they come vaginally? Did they come cesarean? Did they come, how did they, it doesn't really matter. They're your kids and your grandsons. And is that how you feel?
That's exactly how I feel. I feel like that's a distant memory. I can't even remember and see the semantics, that they're here, and this is what matters.
Yeah.
They're here now.
Some people have asked me, how was it hard to bond with them because you didn't carry them? And I just respond with, do you ask like the second parent in any, like, for example, dads? Do you ask dads? Do you find it hard to bond?
So true.
Like no, I always knew that this was my baby. We spent the whole time preparing for this. It was a long journey to get to this.
Yeah.
I have bonded quite easily with them. Yeah.
I'm so happy for your beautiful family. What are they like? Do they have different personalities?
Completely different. They are so much fun. I love toddlers.
Yeah.
It's really hard to take both of them out. Like sometimes I'll just be like, oh, if I only had one, this would be so much easier.
Should give one back.
That Spencer is crazy. He runs everywhere. He's so loud, and he'll like get in there, full of personality. Hugo is so chill. He loves just sitting there playing with things, opening things, drawing.
They are who they are, right? And Jazzy, people ask me this all the time. How's being a grandma different to being a mum?
Oh, so different. So different. The love you have, it's different. It's, and I'm trying not to be overbearing. That's just me anyway, but I'm so proud of them. I love them with my heart and soul. I would do anything for them. And I love spending time with them, no matter how tired you are, Mia, what kind of a week you've had.
So true.
Soon as those grandkids walk in the door, you forget everything and you focus on them. And I intend on being a big part of their lives. I hope that the kids allow me to still, and they will. They're not moving anywhere.
Surely you have some extra privileges. I mean, God, if you can't use that as a little bit of a guilt, like, hey, remember that time I got cut in half so that you could have a baby? Remember that?
Yeah, I'm going to play that card.
Here's my scar. Look at this scar.
Look at this. I never had this before.
You were saying, like, because you don't have to, like, discipline them, and it's not like constant.
It's the best.
It's like this love and playfulness.
Yeah. Mish, it's all of the same love that you have for your children, but none of the overwhelm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not one bit of mental load. It's pure joy.
Yes, it is.
I'm also so lucky that I have so much support close by. Like, Jono is the best. Like, I have my parents, my in-laws, like, there is so much help, and I totally understand how, like, this time in people's lives could be so overwhelming and so exhausting, but I'm so lucky that there are so many hands to help, because I have been able to enjoy this part because of that.
I qualified for maternity leave, Mia. I took maternity leave.
That's excellent.
And then I took 12 months of my own leave, and we helped, like, Sophie, her mother-in-law Sharon was there. We were all there like on a rotating roster.
Oh, you guys, what a family. I mean, they say it takes a village, because it does, but not everyone's lucky enough to have a village. And the lengths that you have all gone for each other, and the love that's there. Oh, Ralph would be very proud.
Yeah.
He did good things in his short time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're lucky we can. Science has progressed, and we're able to do this sort of stuff. And